10 o'clock. This is the BBC Home Service with the 10 o'clock programme of news and current affairs. Hire purchase laws are to be changed to give more protection against door-to-door salesmen. Lord Hume, off to Ottawa for the NATO conference, says he hopes it'll agree to set up an inter-allied nuclear force, which would include Britain's V-bombers. There's been a move towards a settlement of the who-does-what dispute at Barrow. A way has been proposed for giving the House of Commons greater control over government spending. In the secrets case at Southend, Dr. Giuseppe Martelli has been committed for trial. The government are going ahead with plans for changing the hire purchase laws. Announcing this in the Commons, Mr. David Price for the Board of Trade said that proposals would be introduced as soon as possible. Two of the most important would deal with door-to-door salesmen and protection against goods being repossessed. Mr. Price, who was speaking in the debate on consumer protection, said the new Consumer Council would be completely independent. Its members would be free to express their collective opinion forthrightly and without pulling any punches. Earlier, some suggestions for changes in the hire purchase system were made by Mr. George Darling for the opposition. He described the hire purchase charges in some cases as disgracefully high. He thought it would be better for a customer to borrow the money from a bank with interest charges at about a third of what the HP charges would have been. If the customer had no substantial balance at the bank, he should be allowed to pledge the goods he bought as security. This was the chattel mortgage system used in America, and it had many advantages over hire purchase. He urged the government to look into the system and to weigh its possibilities against their own proposals. The Foreign Secretary, Lord Hume, and the Minister of Defence, Mr. Thornycroft, left for Ottawa today to attend the NATO conference, which opens on Wednesday. Lord Hume said at London Airport that he hoped the conference would agree to the formation of an inter-allied nuclear force, including Britain's V-bombers. Our special correspondent in Ottawa says that this plan has had a cordial reception from most of the other NATO countries. Lord Hume said he did not foresee any formal discussion of suggestions for a force of surface ships equipped with Polaris missiles and manned by crews of mixed nationalities, though this would probably be talked about in the corridors. He thought the idea of such a mixed force was a good one, but it needed closer examination to see if it was practicable. After the news, you can hear the views of a leading American authority on defense, Henry Kissinger. Special security precautions have been taken in Ottawa after threats of bomb attacks on hotels where delegates to the NATO conference are staying. Although Ottawa has so far been spared, Montreal has been suffering from a series of bomb outrages. They are believed to be the work of a terrorist organization demanding independence for the French-speaking region of Canada. There's been a move towards settling the who-does-what dispute at the Barrow shipyard of Vickers Armstrongs. The 300 electricians who've been on strike there are going back to work in the morning. A union spokesman said they'd been assured by the company that the 67 electricians who were dismissed would be taken back, provided that the demarcation dispute with the metal workers was settled by Friday. He said an arbitration court would possibly sit in the next day or two. A proposal which would give the House of Commons more control over government expenditure is made today in a report from the Estimates Committee. Every year, says our political correspondent, supplementary estimates have to be presented to the Commons because of either unforeseen expenditure or overspending. The spring supplementary estimates are usually the biggest. In the current year, they amount to £175 million. It's now proposed that a vote on account for some of these spring estimates should be presented in the autumn, considered and reported on by the Estimates Committee, and brought before the Commons before Christmas. This would give MPs more control over such large expenditure. The proposal has the agreement of the Treasury. In the secrets case at Southend, the 39-year-old Italian physicist Dr. Giuseppe Martelli has been committed for trial next month at Essex Assizes at Chelmsford. He's been charged under a section of the Official Secrets Act which deals mainly with attempts to commit an offence. His counsel said he pleaded not guilty and reserved his defence. Secret Service witnesses, whose names were not given, said that cipher pads and code tables found in Dr. Martelli's possession were similar to those used by the Russian intelligence service. Under cross-examination, a special branch officer agreed that he had no evidence that Dr. Martelli, who was working with the Atomic Energy Authority, had had access to classified material which would have harmed the country if he'd passed it on. A 5-month traffic experiment in Birmingham, during which drivers were asked to use dipped headlights on all roads at night, brought about a big drop in accidents. The experiment took place between November and March, and an interim report sent to the Minister of Transport says that compared with the same period in the previous year, 19 fewer people were killed, a drop of 49%, while the total number of accidents went down by 138, 17%. The price of sugar rose again on the London market today by another 30 shillings a tonne to reach a post-war record of £91 10 shillings. After last week's increases, which totalled some £20 a tonne, many housewives have had to pay about a halfpenny a pound more for sugar. The higher prices are the result of a rise in world demand and a fall in Cuban production. In the Commons, a government spokesman said that the price of sugar was expected to remain at a rather high level during the year. Adequate supplies should be available. 5 men and a woman have been remanded on bail at Guildhall Court in London, charged with conspiring to defraud the customs of duty on Swiss watches over the past 7 years. All 6 agreed to surrender their passports. Counsel said the charges involved between £500,000 and £750,000 watches. The duty evaded was at least £500,000. Summonses had also been taken out against another person and 3 companies. Clergymen of all churches in Tottenham, after a meeting today, said they thought it regrettable that the fine achievement of Spurs in winning the European Cup Winners' Cup should have been marred by certain figures and banners in yesterday's victory parade. These, they said, were an insult to our Lord and a grave offence to Christian decency. One minister, a Congregationalist, has sent a telegram to the Home Secretary asking for action under the old blasphemy laws. The Secretary of Spurs Supporters Club said tonight that the people dressed up as angels weren't members of the club. He didn't think they intended to give offence to the churches. The education authorities in Birmingham, Alabama, have ordered the removal of nearly 1,100 Negro students from school. Those over 16 are to be expelled and the others suspended. The students are those arrested earlier this month for demonstrating for equal rights. In retaliation, a Negro leader, the Reverend Charles Billups, has threatened a boycott of Birmingham schools by all Negroes. When they expel the first pupils, he said, then we hope to have 34,000 pupils out of school. The United States Supreme Court has quashed the sentences passed in 4 southern states on Negroes who demonstrated against segregation in 1960 and 61 by occupying places in restaurants reserved for whites. The court ruled that it was unconstitutional for a state to apply segregation and to use force to impose it. Observers think that this may have a greater impact on the structure of race relations in the South than any other decision since the Supreme Court's ruling in 1954 that school segregation was unconstitutional. Racing at the famous Castle Oval course at Manchester will end after this year's November handicap meeting. A meeting of shareholders today approved the sale of the land, except for 4.5 acres, to a newly formed property development company for £500,000. The racecourse company will have 1/3 of the shares in it. The 4.5 acres will be developed as an entertainment centre. But Vinnick, the world chess champion for 15 years, apart from 2 short breaks, lost his title today to Petrosyan. Their 22nd game ended in Moscow in a draw, giving Petrosyan the half point he needed to win the match by 12.5 to 9.5. Mike Sangster has reached the semi-finals of the men's singles in the French lawn tennis championships in Paris. He's the first British player to do so for 26 years. Sangster, who is unseeded, beat the 4th seed, Ken Fletcher of Australia, 8-6, 6-3, 6-8, 6-3. In the women's singles, Christine Truman and Anne Hayden-Jones have both reached the quarter-finals. Widespread showers are forecast for tomorrow. Some of them will be heavy and thundery, particularly in central and southern districts. Temperatures will again be lower than average. And that's the news for the moment. Tonight's review is introduced by Robert Mackenzie.
This evening we've three subjects for discussion. Excuse me. There's the NATO meeting in Ottawa, the outbreak of political advertising in the press in this country, and the suggestion that there's been a fresh incident of political censorship in West Germany. And we start with this last item. Until last week, Gert von Paczensky was editor of a program on West German television called Panorama. And, like the BBC's own Panorama, it's a program that deals with politics and current affairs. For over a year, von Paczensky has been heavily criticized by the Christian Democrats for the style of the program, and last week his contract was not renewed. The incident has reminded many people of last year's attack on the magazine Der Spiegel, and it's been suggested that the